NASA is concerned about SpaceX's new generation of Starlink satellites. More than half of the world's population does not have access to the internet, and Starlink is all set to solve this problem. With nearly 2,000 satellites already in space, Elon Musk is planning on increasing this number to 42,000. But can that really happen without any consequences? Well, let's find out. Before we move on, do remember to subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon for regular updates on the latest developments in space tech and more. What are the Starlink satellites? We all know that Elon Musk is one of the world's richest men, all thanks to the profits he's gained from Tesla. But there's more to that man than just electric cars. In fact, Musk is working on many different ventures, including SpaceX. SpaceX is a spaceflight company, and Starlink Satellites is a division within the company. According to the Starlink website, Starlink is a constellation of multiple satellites that orbit the planet much closer to Earth. The development of these satellites began in 2015, and the first prototypes were launched in 2018. The Starlink satellites have come a long way, and since then almost 2,000 satellites have been released into orbit, with the most recent one being launched just a few weeks ago. However, keep in mind that while there might be 2,000 satellites in orbit right now, many of them are just prototypes or non-operational units, not part of the functioning network. By now you must be wondering what these satellites actually do. Well, they provide internet services. More specifically, they provide access to people who live in rural areas or in areas that don't have access to high-speed broadband networks. According to the website, Starlink is ideally suited for areas of the globe where connectivity has typically been a challenge. It further goes on to say, unbounded by traditional ground infrastructure, Starlink can deliver high-speed broadband internet to locations where access has been unreliable or completely unavailable. To be more specific, Starlink data speeds vary from 50 to 150 megabits per second and latency from 20 to 40 milliseconds for most locations. The website also warns that there are short periods of no connection at all. However, as we launch more satellites, install more ground stations, and improve our networking software, data speed, latency, and uptime, it will improve dramatically. Musk also updated people with a tweet which mentioned that Starlink will double its top speeds to 300 Mbps. However, this was supposed to happen at the end of 2021, and in 2022 it's hard to evaluate these speeds, especially as they vary depending on the location. In order to get this unique internet service, customers have to pay $499 in order to install a mountable satellite dish and router at their homes. There are several different mounting options for rooftops, yards, and the exterior of one's home. On top of that, there's a Starlink app for Android and iOS that comes with an augmented reality system, helping customers choose the best location for their signal receivers. While Starlink vision is to provide global data connection, it is certainly available in very few countries. These include the US, Canada, the UK, France, Germany, Austria, the Netherlands, Ireland, Belgium, Switzerland, Denmark, Portugal, Australia, and New Zealand. Starlink also has a pre-order system, and in that you can request services for other countries, especially European ones such as Italy, Portugal, Spain, etc. However, keep in mind that in order to increase coverage for the majority of the planet, Starlink will need at least 10,000 satellites to orbit. Interestingly, they have mentioned that they want as many as 42,000 satellites in the constellation. So far, they've achieved only 20% of their goal. The development of Starlink satellites. While 20% of the goal seems pretty small, keep in mind even this took years of effort and development. We all know that nothing like this has ever existed, and started something novel isn't easy. It took years for Starlink to receive grants from the FCC. In 2020, they managed to receive nearly $885.5 million in grant funds from the Federal Communications Commission. This helped them accelerate the development process. Finally, after 3 years of successful launches, they were able to achieve this goal to launch 1,000 satellites into orbit. It took another strenuous year to launch 1,000 more functional satellites, and now Starlink boasts almost 2,000 satellites that are orbiting in space. As these satellites increase, so does their business. Last year, Musk revealed that the emerging company was serving more than 10,000 consumers. Along with that, the company continues expanding their pre-order so that they can serve even more customers. They have also released a second-generation home internet satellite dish. This means that there is a possibility that they will provide in-flight Wi-Fi to passengers traveling by aircraft. Just a few months ago, during a talk at Mobile World Congress, Musk mentioned that pretty soon, Starlink would be available worldwide. although regional availability doesn't depend on approval from regulatory parties. Musk has also tweeted that when Starlink exists its beta phase, their service can expand up and beyond. However, currently there's a backlog of several prospective customers still waiting to receive their equipment so that they can get their internet service. Shotwell also mentioned something similar, stating that the global serviceability will be achieved soon. In other words, we've successfully deployed 1,800 or so satellites, and once all of those satellites reach their operational orbit, we will have continuous global coverage. The FCC also recently added Starlink to its database of broadband providers, and they reported that as of December 2020, it's available to 0.08% of Americans. This was back when Starlink was just launching its beta. At that particular point in time, all customers had access to a maximum download of 100 Mbps and upload speeds of 10 Mbps. Why is NASA concerned? Now let's talk about why NASA is concerned about a seemingly harmless satellite system. Well, according to NASA, the new Starlink satellites are increasing the chance of collision in orbit. In order to bring all this to light, NASA has written a letter to the Federal Communications Commission, the FCC. The 5-page letter was submitted on the 8th of February, and Space News was the first to report it. Additionally, there was a 1-page letter from the National Science Foundation, and it was sent on NASA's behalf by the National Telecommunication and Information Administration. Simultaneously, SpaceX has also submitted a proposal to the Federal Communications Commission asking permission to put 30,000 more satellites into orbit as part of their Gen 2 system. Currently, there are 1,800 functional satellites in orbit, and there have been many near misses in orbit. According to one study, Starlink is responsible for half of all close encounters in low Earth orbit. Considering their past, NASA is even more concerned about Starlink's new fleet of satellites. In the letter to the Commercial Space Transportation Interagency Group, the agency has expressed concerns with the potential for a significant increase in the frequency of conjunction events and possible impacts to NASA's science and human spaceflight missions. The letter further adds that NASA wants to ensure that the development of the Starlink Gen 2 system is conducted prudently, in a manner that supports spaceflight safety and the long-term sustainability of the space environment. On top of that, NASA is apprehensive about Starlink's automated collision avoidance system. They can't help but wonder if the system will sufficiently cover the 5-fold increase of objects in orbit. It's extremely probable that an additional 1,000 of satellites will be significant impact on both crew and uncrewed missions in orbit. And all of this can be credited to an increase in conjunctions or close encounters with other objects. Not only does this increase the risk of collision, but it might also cause launch risk. This is because there would be fewer launch windows available, as there would be an additional 1,000 satellites passing within the rocket's planned flight path. The agency further referenced the Europa Clipper mission as an example and mentioned that NASA is also concerned with an increasing unavailability of safe launch windows, especially for missions requiring instantaneous or short launch windows. NASA also states that Starlink's Gen 2 satellites can cause problems for present and future scientific missions. These satellites would double the number of satellite streaks found in the images produced by the Hubble Space Telescope. Currently, this interference is just 8%, so you can imagine how much it'll increase. To make matters worse, these satellites can also increase risk of interference with any planetary defense surveys that are performed by ground-based telescopes. These are used by NASA to scan the skies and check for any potentially threatening asteroids. However, with all this, it's important to note that NASA is not explicitly opposed to Starlink's internet service. They aren't saying that SpaceX should not be granted permission. Instead, they believe that the entire process should receive close coordination from any and all affected parties. So far, neither SpaceX nor Musk has responded to any of these concerns publicly, and that just means we'll have to be patient, wait, and see what happens.